Of course, it's also fun when you can have a witch flying in the sky singing something because you're just like, whoa, oh my God, this is epic. And it's all sort of making you forget a little bit for a second that you're watching a musical. Everyone was there to do one job, which was we have to beat Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel. Like, how are we going to do that? Like, we have to give 300%, you know? You're being really bold in a film that on paper doesn't really allow that. You know, they're like, come on, this is a popcorn movie. Why are you spending time making me cry?
We got a lot to talk about. We're obviously going to talk about Wicked, but there's a lot of other stuff to talk about with your resume. So we'll, throw a couple curveballs. I mean, I guess tell us now, like, we were friends with Jim Lyons. So love to talk about Velvet Goldmine and the Ned Beatty movie. What was that called? Um, ugh.
Are you talking about Black and White? Are you talking about the Ned Beatty movie?
Hold on, I have it up here now. Spring Forward.
Oh, right. Yeah. I
This
mean,
is
look, Jim was, just to jump right in, Jim was my mentor. He was everything to me as far as like not just as an editor, but as a friend, as somebody who I would like to model my career after because he just epitomized art and rock and roll, and he was like
Mhm.
the Keith Richards of film editors. And I just when I was first starting out in New York, I think I was still a PA, and saw Safe for the first time at the Angelica Film
Oh yeah.
Center,
Hmm.
and I remember thinking how physically ill I felt coming out of that theater. And I was like, I got to work for these filmmakers because they've done something that no other film has ever done to me, which is to make me feel like I'm in the character's shoes. And I sought out Jim um, because I was just in love with his work with Todd. And then I got to work with him on Velvet Goldmine. Of course, that was my first musical to work on ever, and it was just this like crash course and like Bowie and Iggy Pop and glam rock and just how to make something really cool and unique. And I was like, if I can make anything close to what Todd and Jim were doing, I'd be okay. And so I've been chasing that dream ever since, just that like, how do I how do I just sort of inspire other people who like how they inspired me as somebody coming up the ranks?
Yeah, and Jim was like that was I think his one of his only writing credits on Velvet Goldmine. So he was, a real collaborator on that. And knowing him as I didn't know him for very long, but knowing that like kind of what he was about, it really seems like there's a lot of him in that movie. He was an unbridled guy. Like he really the art meant more than anything. And it was just it was amazing to just kind of get the energy off of him when he was an artist in residence 2 or 3 times at the very beginning of our when our course went from like 4 to 6 weeks, and we had the bandwidth to bring someone in. He was like the second person after Larry Silk to come in. It was just like it's starstruck. Like I'm like it's hard
Yeah,
to describe what it's like to have that kind of talent. And some of the kids were a little scared. Some of the students were actually a little intimidated by him, but he's a little wild, but he's so, you know,
I know.
anyway.
I loved him so much. Yeah, I loved him so much, and that sort of that notion of like you know being an artist and being a person and your work all being one of the same was something that felt very inspiring to me, that I could somehow try to embody that in my own work. That so much of what my DNA and my voice as an artist is embodied in the work, and um, that it wasn't a technical endeavor editing. That it was no different than making a collage with found objects that you'd find, walking around the streets of New York and then making a piece of art the next day.
Hmm.
Um, he just embodied that attitude and just lived his life in a way that was just incredibly inspiring. And I certainly would not be talking about any of my work without him, having worked with him. And he was something else in
Well,
my
it's
life.
we jumped a bit into the mix. So we
Yeah,
were talking
I
Jim
was gonna
Lyon.
I
You
was
can
gonna
reel it back
reel us
in, but I
back.
just want to, just for station ID, we were talking about Jim Lyons, late great filmmaker, editor, artist. But in terms of what you achieved, so I mean, we'll go around. If we have to edit this, we will. These are loose conversations because they are. We're nonlinear people. This is a nonlinear conversation. But I had a moment in Wicked where I got overwhelmed and my eyes teared up at the very end. I've been here for many, many years. So that last blast of singing was the commercial that you would see every 5 seconds living in New York. And I was sort of out of context for me until today. And it all kind of, guys, I never saw the show on Broadway, but I had always heard that voice. And so to sort of understand everything, because it built, that's literally the last moment of chapter one or part one of the film. It was like everything came together and I seriously couldn't hold it. It was like nostalgia, power, the characters, kind of that there's the sort of breaking through. You totally got me. So if you owe some of that to Jim Lyons, so be it. But and this is a much different sort of mechanism, right? Or it isn't. I mean, I guess it's not, right? You're sort of you're trying to make me feel that way, or you know what I mean? Like whether it's this giant big budget musical or whether it's like an independent film about glam rock. I mean, it's there.
Yeah, I think that I think that that's the trick is that trying to make something feel grounded and intimate and um, personal, the way films made me feel when I was working on Velvet Goldmine or Garden State or Raising Victor Vargas or, and then mixing that with something that's really epic and nostalgic, the way films made me feel in the 80s, like watching E.T. or Empire Strikes Back or
Mhm.
that sort of that childhood wonderment. Like to mix those two things is basically the thing I've always been chasing in my career is to make something that feels has one foot in that sort of intimate and grounded and emotional stuff, and then something that's spectacle to it, because I really was a child of the 80s and then that sort of Spielberg, Lucas, and then horror film and then David Lynch and then New York was like this independent experimental, you know, crazy, experimental indie scene and I just felt like I was a real mutt of all these different things and so when I started to get a chance to make stuff on my own, I started gravitating towards that sort of intimate and grounded thing, but also music driven work. And then when I got to work with John Chu, then there was a little bit more spectacle and a little bit bigger scale things that I could start chasing.
Yeah. Well, this seems like, I mean, I've never seen anything this big. This is big. And yet there,
It's like,
well, but you have to, like, you could have gone off completely off the rails and just been CG spectacle, like just because it really works on that level, but it also works on character complexity where I really wasn't expecting it. Now, granted, I don't know the show. I know about it, but it's not, so this is the definitive text for me. But to have it ride the line between sort of like, the popular mean girl, but then she's more than that. And then they kind of go through some heavy things together and they share and they argue and they like you managed to find a, a character balance in something where I was really like, wondering how you would pull that off. I mean, it's not just you, but seriously, like it seemed really balanced, surprisingly well balanced as a character piece for something that big.
Yeah, thank you. Well, of course, I owe a lot to John and the writers to, give the sort of, the DNA, the foundation with the script. But I pride myself in trying to find all those sort of nuances in the performances and giving time to develop character and not be rushed. I think the studio would have liked this to be an hour and 30-minute movie, but I don't think it would have been, and by the way, we tried to do that version. It's not like we just, rested on our laurels. I mean, we really tried to break it where we could as far as pace, but we just found like the more we shortchanged character and just time to breathe uh, within the story, the less impact it had. And um, so I'm really happy that I was allowed the time to explore these characters in a nuanced way. That whole scene of the Ozdos ballroom could have been easily cut in half, and um, to just take your time and really feel how uncomfortable that makes everybody in the theater, and how you can hear a pin drop, and then hopefully tears. I think that is just, you're being really bold in a film that paper doesn't really allow that. They're like, come on, this is a popcorn movie, escape, flying monkeys, why are you spending time making me cry? But I think it really pays off. I think that's a surprising thing, hopefully, about people who come in with preconceived notions, is that, you can have your cake and eat it too, as far as exploring characters and have spectacle, and hopefully hopefully you just surprise the audience. And editor who get any editor who gets a chance to, like, you know do something like this, to be able to do melodrama and drama and comedy and big CG stuff, and do something like very grounded with character. And it's just, it's a dream come true. You just don't often get a chance to do that kind of thing with anything out there, really.
Yeah, well, I assume you'll get to do it twice too. You're gonna get to do the
That's
part two.
right.
Plus they,
Yes, yes.
yeah. Is that something that's happening? Did they shoot them both at the same time, or is it like,
I'm literally in the edit room right now.
oh,
Um, uh, and we took the month of November off, because we were promoting the movie, and John, our director, had a baby. So we took a little bit of break, and then today's our first day back, and we are, taking it all in. We were saying how the first movie was basically our preview for the second movie, and so now we are, we're cracking it open. We did shoot both at the same time. It was like block shooting a series. So I was getting two different sets of dailies every other day. We had two different projects set up, so I could dance between the two different movies. And we finished an assembly. I brought on Tatiana Regal, who's a really great editor, who cut like I, Tonya and Cruella, and she helped me with the assembly of the second movie while I was trying to get the first movie on its feet. So she's gone now, and now I'm back, trying to, like, get into the basically the director's cut. And yeah, we have a year to finish the second one. So yeah,
wow.
hopefully we'll do it again. We'll,
That
yeah.
was my question. Is there a target date?
Yeah, it's supposed to be November next year. And that is, it seems like a lot of time. But with all the VFX and the music aspects, and just, it's a much different movie. So we'll have to figure some stuff out as far as, like, a lot with tone. It's a much darker film. So yeah, it's definitely gonna be a race to get to the finish line.
Wow. Do you
I went.
guys want to? Yeah,
Yeah,
go
I'd
ahead.
like to hear more about that scene in the ballroom. I mean, it's such a different, like you have all this stuff going on with the musical numbers and everything, and then that's so quiet. Like that must have been like really hard to like suddenly shift gears, and it seems it's such a pivotal moment of the movie. What was that like in the cutting room? Like, is that the hardest thing of the movie, or was it easier than these big numbers with all the VFX stuff?
I yeah, to answer your question, I feel like any scenes that are quiet and more nuanced and it's like a classical guitarist playing every note, if you hear a wrong note, then it kind of all falls apart. And John and I discussed prior to even starting shooting that this scene was basically the pivotal scene of the movie. If this scene didn't work, then the rest of the movie would fall apart. So it was a pretty major, even though it wasn't like a big action scene like the balloon chase or the monkey chase or these big musical numbers. It actually was more important than anything to get right. John shot 9 to 10 minute uninterrupted takes of Elphaba coming into the room to her leaving the room. So they play out the entire scene. So I was getting, again and again these really long takes that by the end of me watching each take, I was just in a puddle of tears. And right away, you're like, okay, this is amazing. 9 to 10 minute interrupted takes. My job is done, right? I have nothing else to do. And so it's very intimidating to try to evoke those same feelings with whatever I put together editorially. And I just knew that I had to use my heart and my gut to sort of help select the quote unquote gems of these long takes. And then with the pace to be really bold with it. And so it was a bit of an accordion trying to figure out what was too much and what wasn't enough. But John and I both agreed like we can be bold, we can be uncomfortable, and it took a couple rounds of figuring that out with an audience. A lot of the performances there are from my original assembly, so I've got a lot of pride picking that stuff up right away from these long takes. This this device where Elphaba basically drowns out the rest of the Ozdas with the clapping of her hands was something that I came up with in my assembly because I just thought there'd be something else to sort of just get even more in her head that might be fun to play around with. And I like the idea of mixing point of views, even though it doesn't really make sense point of view wise, because some people are like underwater or like muted sound, and other people are like speaking perfectly good dialogue. But I just like the idea of just mixing point of view and just letting that, whatever the gestalt of all that, just build the emotion. And like again, it doesn't quite all make sense if you're like, whose point of view is this? Wait a minute, are we over here now? And like, but there was something about it all working together that um back to like just to talk about Jim Lyons a little bit, like he had this notion of just playing with his footage and just like anything goes, and that me being allowed to do that even in my assembly stages, to just be really bold with the pacing or do something weird with like the sound design even in my assembly stages, I think allowed this scene to sort of um, have the same feeling as those raw dailies. But yeah, it was, it's terrifying because you're like, can we get away with this type of scene in the middle of just a few minutes we were dancing away in the library with Fierro, and technically we're still in the same number. And so, that you're sort of like using your gut to say, no, I think this is working. There's no comp from another movie saying that this should work in some ways, but let's just go what we think is our gut to build out
It
this
made me
set piece.
feel it's not you mentioned a comp from another movie. It's not the same thing, but it did make me feel it made me think of actively the scene where they're reading the book of the show and all that jazz, and we sort of disappear into Roy Scheider's, like he's like breaking the pencil, and like you, all the sound disappears as he's having like the like I think he thinks he's having a heart attack if I remember correctly, or he's panicking. But it's such a strong perspective sequence. You totally go. It first of all, it makes sense. A movie. It doesn't have to be realistic. So what you're doing in a sense is like you're saying this isn't about all that. It's about them. So of
Yeah.
course you would focus on what's going on. But it did make me I thought of all that jazz at that moment. So
That's the highest compliment because, of course, every editor is like, "How do I make all that jazz?" And again, like films like that. I was a fan of, as a kid, like The Music Man and Grease, and then when I was older, all that jazz just scared the shit out of me because I was like, "What's this movie?" Like I think my parents accidentally took me to that film when I was like 10 or something,
oh boy.
and I was like, "Oh my God, what's what is going on?" But I'm sure all that, yeah, all those cinema just seeping into your brain, like why am I coming up with this weird thing? But I'm really happy how that turned out because it is so different from the rest of the movie, and it's hard to jam in something that different and unique, and it still feels like the same movie. And I'm
I
pleased that it, yeah.
I wanted to take this away from the big blockbuster scenes because my wife was surprised of how risque the scene was with the mother and the affair. And I'm wondering if that was supposed to be longer or shorter, or I'm really curious if that was edited down or up.
I think it was a oneer, that sequence,
It
right?
it was a oneer. I there are some tricky speed ups in there to help things along a little bit. There was debate for sure about like especially because we're quote unquote maybe a family film, like
Right.
and so the studio always wanting to check off as many boxes with a demographic or something, like, do we need this? And like, yes, we need this. And also, trying to insert a little bit of uh, more mature subject matter and what is otherwise, maybe, um, silly or something, compared to popular. I think there's something to that, and hopefully we don't turn off too many people that just when you're trying to get hook them in. There's like it's like kind of No One Mourns the Wicked, which that dance number is part of, is not a banger number. It's like it's not a pop. It's not like the best version of a pop song to get you into a musical. It's pretty dark, and there's some pretty like screaming at babies, and ostracizing young Alphaba. Like it's not a way to like make people fall in love with you, but I'm glad how it all kind of works together as one unit as far as showing some gravity of what the story you're about to be told. And I think that taking we discussed taking out that beat, but and the same thing with the flashbacks in general. We had a cut of it where we didn't do any of the flashbacks because you're like, well, how much of the flashbacks, will the audience care at the beginning of a movie? Or, and then, we even discussed not having the moment with Alphaba seeing her younger self at the end of the movie, and all those things. We just felt like if we didn't have that, then again, if we didn't set the stage, plant the seed, with all these things, the whole gestalt of it just wouldn't have as much of an emotional impact.
The whole movie is a flashback, though, too. Like it sort of gives you license to
I know
go wherever you
it's
want.
like
So,
I know.
which I liked actually, where she's, she knows her better than she's letting on with at the very beginning, and it, you don't. I mean, again, not knowing it, you don't know really quite how deep it goes. But really, like you can see the cracks in her sort of, popular mission statement armor. Like it's really,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
happens again. If it happened in a half an hour, you might not buy it, right? But it's happening over the course of a lot of modulation.
Yeah.
And so, I appreciate the time spent on it. I had a question also about, it seemed like maybe there were more, but three specific times where the characters address camera. And I always love it because it always makes you think of the birds when she's like, "This is your fault." And of course, the Simpsons making fun of it. But this happens early on with them, I believe. And then, oh gosh, where is it? I wrote it down, but I don't want to like go through my notes. Maybe because it seems very intentional that it's in three specific places. The last one being, looking directly at the camera at the end of the last shot of the film, I think is right down the barrel. So it's engaging us in this conflict of identity
Yeah.
and being true to yourself, being popular. Okay, it was during Popular was the second one, but like, what do I have to do with it? Like, you're bringing me into this, right? Like, it seems very intentional. So I didn't know if you had anything about that, or just it felt like the right choice to you.
I do think it's the right choice. I like how Alice Brooks, the cinematographer, and John, like they break the sort of yeah, I think they just break it up and they challenge us sometimes to like look, by being less theatrical and more sort of like, hey, are we're speaking to you. I think that I think that again to sort of talk about Todd and Jim just being kind of experimental and otherwise sort of commercial film. I just think like anything goes with John, Alice, me, and Chris Scott, the choreographer. And, if we have a tool in our toolbox, whether it's like, breaking the fourth wall or doing dissolves or jump cuts or fades to black or, you know, really anything, we're gonna utilize it, and like or split screens for that matter, just a lot of different sort of tools in our toolbox to sort of refresh or challenge the audience. You know, I think that what I love about John is that he knows that our audience is not just a students of cinema, but they're people who are just go to the theaters just to escape, or it's like the TikTok generation that wants to, make, dance and repurpose it. And I just think that we try to have one foot in the sort of traditional styles of films that inspired us when we were young, but also trying to give something a little bit fresh to it. And so just to say that anything goes without being too schizophrenic about it, I think some people really understand the tonal shifts, and some people are just like, that's a lot of tonal shifts. But I happen to like playing with comedy and melodrama and elements of horror, or just big musical throwbacks, like we're doing The Sound of Music or something. Like I just love throwing a lot at the canvas and just seeing what sticks. And sometimes you're just like, that's not great. Like my first version of What Is This Feeling was all split screens, the entire number of split screens. And John's like, amazing, why don't you calm down a little bit and chill that out. But I know this is a long-winded way of answering your question, but just doing different things to challenge and wake up the audience, and mess with their expectation. Defying Gravity starts and stops like 6 times, and they're like, oh, I was just like, and I just think that there's something about messing with the audience a little bit that makes you even want it more, and even ending the movie the way we do as a big cliffhanger. It's like uh, leaving them wanting more, just really messing with the audience, and hopefully in return they feel satisfied and not cheated. I just think it's like the sort of the big thing we're just playing with. And sometimes we do go overboard and we have to pull back, and it's too much. And we do a lot of the breaking the fourth wall, and like in the Heights, and with Usnavi, our narrator. And I just there's something about and about back to like all that jazz, just being really experimental about things, and then trying to make something commercial. You're kind of like fooling the audience that you're the one movie, but then you're actually all these other kinds of movies at the same time.
No, I think there's a feeling of real playfulness. And I thought sometimes that because Bob Fosse wasn't primarily a filmmaker, although he was an amazing filmmaker, that he didn't jump in playing by the rules, and he sort of decided to make them up as he went along. And there's some really incredibly imaginative stuff that he did because he wasn't like too formal about what he was capable, what was allowed to do and not allowed to do. So yeah, this seems very like kind of very liberated from that, and in a great way that like you've seen stuff that's translated from the stage, and it's just like, oh, okay, this is a movie of a show, and there's like this doesn't feel, this feels like a movie in and of itself, in the
Yeah.
ways like you're saying, it's going out into off the cliffs at the in a song, it's doing acrobatic things that it could never do on stage, but then it's also like you're having this personal confrontation with the characters and with the audience in a way that you're just never there. Like it's just it's nice because it really does take advantage of what cinema brings to a story like this versus theater.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
I am curious about the balance or the ratio. I don't even know how to ask this question, but first there's the movie The Wizard of Oz decades and decades ago, and then there's the Broadway show. I don't remember what year it came out, and then you've got Wicked, the movie. And I don't even know if it's inspiration or if it is technology or if it's the modern day. What is the balance between what you take from where?
I mean, I somewhat expected that half of our audience was going to know The Wizard of Oz, and half the audience is going to have no idea what this thing was. And maybe there was a quarter of the audience that might not have seen the stage play. I just assumed that there was going to be a lot of people not knowing certain things about the source material, whether it was the original film, or the original Frank L. Baum books, or the original Wicked book, or the Broadway musical. So I just had to assume the worst and try to give enough information that I thought any person wouldn't be lost. And that took a lot of experimentation. I mean, the opening shot alone used to go on much longer, and it used to start with dripping water, and then the water turned into a river, and then you would find the stairs, and then you would find the bucket, and then you would see the hat. And so it was like taking forever. It was just like people were going to be lost like 4 minutes. And then there was some lines in Munchkinland that we thought that maybe we should steal from Munchkinland, that the Munchkins were saying, and then what Glinda the Good was saying, and we thought that we'd add those lines just to ground an audience. Glinda, how dead is she? Okay, who is she? and and then we'll have the narrator say, okay, it's about this person, and then maybe somebody who doesn't know any of this information could start piecing together some of this information, and people who do know the Wizard of Oz will they'll find that even more enjoyable. So we had to kind of take these things in different levels to kind of well, some people are going to be completely lost. Some people are going to love it because they're going to put it all together right away, and some people are going to be in between. And so just trying to balance that was a constant question, because otherwise you're like, who cares, and who's this person flying in the bubble, and it's a lot. It's a, that whole prologue was a lot, because you could be completely lost for 20 or 30 minutes if you're not careful.
Right. That's why I feel, after Thanksgiving weekend, being at a blockbuster movie, so grateful that I am of the age where I saw the original, I saw the show, and I saw, I didn't read the books, but I feel like I had the most experiential experience out of everyone in the kid, because the kids don't know the movie. I should say the younger kids. And then more recently, not everyone has seen the musical.
Yeah. I mean, the hope is now that they'll want to go back to those, original source materials in some ways, and they'll have even more deeper experience. But, it was our task that, we just, it wasn't so different from Crazy Rich Asians or In the Heights, where those are adaptations too, that we were just like, we have to throw away all that, people who had read the book. It doesn't matter. We just have to assume that no one knows anything, and treat all the audience at the same level. And then at least, if you can get some of it right, then, we won't lose the majority of the audience, but it takes a lot of experimentation. Sometimes, even if you test something out with a friends and family or a test audience, they're not going to tell you all the things that you need to know. So you're doing a lot of sort of asking questions yourself, or asking questions of them, trying to get the data, what are you confused? Do you know what we're talking about when we say the Wicked Witch of the West? Do you even know what that means? It's so but that's what I love about adaptations, is that they're really challenging on one hand, but also, if you just kind of throw it all away and just make your movie, and then if people think you got it right, at least the essence of it, then they'll reward you, but it is terrifying with something like Wicked, where there's just as many fans in some ways to the Broadway production as the original movie. There's a crazy amount of people out there, and what we found is that there was so much ownership to the Broadway musical as well as the original Wizard of Oz, that you're kind of like, oh my God, the stakes are way too high. They're just never gonna make. It's like making a Star Wars movie or something. They're very protective of it, and but then eventually, if you can get it right, then they'll really reward you for sure. So far so good. We still have a second half, but
but no backlash, no subreddits killing you guys for destroying the show.
The internet is the internet. That's all I have to say. It's just they have to do what they do, which is what I love about movies is everyone has an opinion and everyone has ownership. It's the one art form where everyone has an opinion and none of it is right and none of it's wrong. And I love that. And it's all fair game, from the past couple of weeks, people have really seemed to embrace the movie. So that, of course makes you happy. And if somebody kicks the tires on it and say that's not for me, like I totally get it. Um, um, you know, and yeah, I'm sure somewhere on a Reddit somewhere, so they're just like tearing us apart somewhere. But so far it's been pretty positive.
That's great. It's a big, right? It's doing really well. I mean, I don't read too much about what's going on, but it's breaking records as far as right? Or maybe I'm misreading.
Yeah, they said, I think I just read that it's the biggest musical adaptation ever. So that's, considering how much I love films like Grease and you know, uh, you know, all that jazz, even films recently like La La Land and Greatest Showman, I'm really pleased to be in anywhere near those films,
You worked on Hedwig too, is that right?
Yeah, so I worked on Hedwig and the Angry Inch and as an additional editor, and they hired me because I had worked on Velvet Goldmine, and of course that there were both killer films involved with that, and so Andy Marcus was the main editor on that, and he was like, "How do you do a musical?" It's like, I know how to do a musical, but you have to hire me as an editor, not as an assistant. And I worked really closely, especially with Stephen Trask, on musical numbers. And again, that was a good training for, what would eventually come, having worked on Hedwig and on Velvet Goldmine, and just really early in my career, sort of having a chance to work on these sort of big musical numbers where a lot of people, there wasn't like an expert's, murder's roll of assistant editors to tell you how to organize a musical. You just like, maybe people are doing music videos and stuff. So it was great. It was really good training for sure.
Oh, it sounds like it. I didn't realize you had that many under your belt. But if you look back, it's really like it's been there since the beginning.
I mean, Camp was an early film that I had, musical, performances with musical theater kids and of course, having music driven films in my career, like Garden State or Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. And then, working on the remake of Fame, working on the Glee 3D movie, like the list goes on and on of the, working on Girls, which had a lot of, musical elements to it, whether it's people singing on camera or just the song drops, all this stuff really culminated into, a certain skill sets to be able to cut the stuff, and it all, hopefully all sort of, gave me more sort of confidence in what I would approach, as we scaled up, as things got bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
I feel like this is an episode, the movie Memento, where we're going backwards in time.
Okay.
Usually we start out with your past, your history.
I'm very non-linear. You're right. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. Let's go back. Let's go. Let's rewind. Let's put the rewind sound.
No,
in there.
I was cut. I was cut at the very beginning. Josh, like, shut up. Let him speak. Let him speak.
We'll do the intros at the end. Like it seems very apropos. But it made me think of there's like Grease is one of these. I saw it as a little kid, and then I've seen it a billion times, and it's like it's very like a hard division. Like a number's coming, and then everything stops for the number, and then it ends, and we'll move on, and we'll go back to acting. And this seems much more fluid, and it's a different animal. And I mean, obviously they're both musicals, but this one seems to really slide in and out of the performances rather than like have a clear delineation between them like that. But I don't know if that's logic or just the way it kind of panned out for you. You know what I mean? I don't even know if you could have done that on something like this.
I mean, look, my approach to cutting musicals is no different than my approach to cutting a dialogue scene, which is they're supposed to be all one of the same.
Mm.
And um and so like the scene shouldn't stop just because he starts singing. And so ever since I've been working with John, especially within the Heights, we just wanted everything to feel very grounded and seamless and organic into the world building or the character building or the dramatic storytelling. And so that approach, whether I'm cutting a musical number or cutting a dialogue scene, is that there's no difference. Like I look at performance, what moves me, what makes me laugh, and I start building from there, whether it's selects or some other ways of organizing. But and then it's helpful when you have somebody like Cynthia and Ari, who can sing live, so they can really flow from dialogue to vocals, seamlessly. And then you have these amazing music editors in Jack Doman and Catherine Wilson who can help me find the nuances to make it even smoother when I'm just cutting my assembly. And then I have somebody like Andy Nelson, who is like Spielberg's mixer. He's been nominated 25,000 Oscars, mixing the dialogue into the vocal. It's just like I just have all the tools available to me, but also my approach is very like almost uh the sort of naivete of sort of how I'm cutting. Like there's no difference, we just like go one and the other and it's all the same. And I think that attitude and all the amazing craftspeople that are behind and front and back of the camera, helping us along, just makes it into like a very seamless exchange. And I have that love of like, okay, here comes a song, of like Grease and stuff. I love those kind of movies too. But I think maybe again, like, maybe Les Mis had done this, that it was a little bit more fluid into one another. But just having the opportunity to do something that was maybe a little fresher and a little bit more like, no, there's no difference between the movie is the movie. It's not, even though it's a musical, it's all gonna feel of the same. And of course, it's also fun when you're gonna have a witch flying in the sky singing something, because you're just like, whoa, oh my God, this is epic. And it's all sort of um making you forget a little bit for a second that you're watching a musical, that it's all just like powerful and fun and escapism and what have you.
Yeah. Were they, so this might be a naive question, were they singing with location mics? I tap like they were wearing lavaliers or something, but like, is that the entirety of those songs are live performances on set? Or is there some mix between?
Yeah.
Wow.
Every song was shot live. Every song was shot live. There is definitely some tricks here and there as far as like mixing takes and mixing in, bumps, using pre-recorded and re-recording. But for the most part, it was definitely live, recorded by Simon Hayes, who also recorded Les Mis. And and um, and what we found is, even when we would lean into a pre-record on something, anytime we'd go to the live, it always felt more connected and more grounded. So we just leaned into it. Like I would say like 99% of the time, we just always try to find some usable take that we could. And if we had to re-record something or find a line or something here or there, we would use it. But we really leaned heavy into that, because we knew that well, first of all, they had the chops. Like they're just like the two best singers on the planet.
Right.
And then we had an amazing recording, and then we had again all these amazing people to make it work if it was just like if there was a mic bump or something like that, you know. Even Cynthia, you know, on wires, you know, being flipped around and upside down, she was singing live. So it just we were, you know, we just got away with a lot. But it was mostly just to make the performances feel really grounded. And again, that seamless quality between going from dialogue. You can't really do that with, you know, pre-records, and like it always feels canned. And you know, you can do almost anything, but it always makes you like, okay, now the soundtrack has started, you know, and you know, but when you have live, you can really like really ground it, you know.
No, it felt authentic. I just didn't know if they had, you know, performed like didn't sound like a studio cut, like you were going to a soundtrack. It's like perhaps that they had like, you know, recorded it in their own voices, but it definitely felt real. Like you're exactly what you're saying. Like it's a story that sometimes goes into into a musical direction. Sometimes it doesn't, and it's just all one idea. I also thought that I watched A Complete Unknown over the weekend, and I thought that Timothy Chalamet did a commendable job singing as Bob Dylan, and it would have never worked if they had just piped in Bob Dylan's voice in that movie. Like it was just the clear separation between the real person and the portrayal of the person would have been, it would ruined everything.
Yeah, I think that if you have your actor who can pull it off, you know, you might as well, you got to use it. I mean, it's and you know, Ari and Cynthia are living with these characters, and so they're just embodying everything into it. So it's like, you know, one doesn't, you know, the vocals are dialogue, and so you just if you treat it all the same, and they can pull it off, like the physicality of that and the amount of takes that they have to do, it's pretty. I mean, I was exhausted by just the sheer will of it. It's just like, I mean, I had 250 hours of footage between the two movies, and you know, they were just giving it their all the whole time. So it's just like really, yeah, it was amazing they could pull it off, but everyone was there to do one job, which was, you know, how, you know, we have to beat, you know, you know, Kristen Chenoweth and Adina Menzel like this, you know, how are we going to do that? Like we have to give 300%, you know. And
great cameos, by the way.
You know,
they were also.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, that was amazing. It was amazing to keep that a secret for so long too, because, you know, it's you know, even when we were previewing it, we're like, should we cut this out for the preview? Because, you know, how is this not gonna? And everyone was just, they held their tongues. So they knew how much it was going to mean to the fans. So it's great.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
you know,
we got to wrap things up. Usually we tell people like, oh, you'll come back a second time, and we mean it. With you, you've got to come back like 6 times. Like we should have you back once a month.
You can bring. I love you guys, and I you know, I have obviously I have a lot to say about just making films and the journey, because it's you know, it's amazing to have done this, you know, for over a couple decades and come from this sort of really amazing New York indie scene, you know, which I'm really proud of, coming through as an assistant editor and then coming up the ranks and then get on the other side of it to make something like this is really, really cool.
We're going to rename this series Talking with Myron. That's like, forget about Talking with MEWShop. It should be Talking with Myron.
Okay.
You'll do a residency like Billy Joel at the Garden every month. We'll just have you come in and.
Yeah, man. I'll bring my piano. And you can, yeah, let's do it.
Just bring it. Just don't bring your. This is what I learned a few years ago before COVID. I saw Billy Joel at the Garden, and he brought his daughter out to sing Christmas, 2 Christmas songs. Everyone booed in my section. They're like, "We didn't come here to see you. We came here to see your father."
Wow, that's just mean.
So not
Yeah,
on
there's
that
no.
note, not on that note. We have 1 minute each. We need to have a one takeaway. This is we need to have you back at least 3 more times. But the one takeaway, if someone is watching, if one of our 4 subscribers is watching this, uh,
They're right here.
and they're like, "Holy crap! They got Myron Kerstein on Talking with MEWShop." What's the one takeaway that you would give to a young up and coming editor or a professional that they should know and keep with them through their career?
I'll give you two things. One is keep every door open. Like, if there's an opportunity, never say no. Like, say yes to everything. And the second thing is don't do it unless you love it, because it's a really long, hard journey, and but this business rewards people who stick with it and learn your craft. And it took me a long time to even understand what the hell I was doing. Like, it took half of my career to feel like, okay, I have finally understanding editing, and that was frustrating and really wonderful. And I think that it's really hard. You have to stick with it. So don't say no to anything. Like, I don't care if it's the whatever it is. If you're cutting a bar mitzvah video. By the way, I've cut wedding videos. I've cut everything. Like MetLife infomercials, like internal infomercials, like, you know, uh Hillary Clinton, like political ads for a senatorial campaign, like everything that you could think of, you know, VH1 promos back in the day, anything that I could do, I did it, not because I always wanted to, but I just wanted opportunities. So keep every door open, don't say no, but also don't do it unless you love it, because it's hard. It's a hard, long journey, but it's also a rewarding one if you can stick with it, for sure.
Jason, your takeaway.
Well, I have sort of two, but the first one is, I mean, the fact that you kind of started out, and how you started out with Jim Lyons and working on that movie, and how that like led, almost full circle. You said you were kind of chasing that to be at that level. I think you've kind of gotten there. If maybe you don't think you have, but I mean, this is a testament to it, and I'm sure it's going to even get better. But like, to stay the course like that, I mean, like from something you learn so young to apply that, I think the lesson is like, don't take for granted. Also, the beginning jobs you get, some of the hardest jobs, whatever it might be, not like MetLife infomercials, but like the things where you're learning stuff from like greats like Jim Lyons, like that keep at it, store that information, and keep building on it, because you're a testament to that. And the second is, Josh, weren't you in the high school musical version of Grease? Weren't you in that?
I was Kaniki in my
Oh my
high
God,
school production. So
amazing.
the director was the sister of, or the aunt of, a kid, like a jock, and she bullied all of the football team to be in it. So she had all these football players,
That's the
which
real takeaway right there.
I was a horrible one, but all of us were were the greasers. And
Oh my God.
I happened to have a moment the summer before where I sang Grease Lightning, like just really not well, but I was like, I'm going to try. What could it hurt? And I knew it wasn't the lead role. I could never have been Danny Zuko, who sings it in the movie, but I knew Kaniki sang it in the show. And I was like, well, let's see. And I got it. And yeah, I peaked at 18 during my high school performance of Grease.
I literally have goosebumps hearing this story. I don't know why. This makes me so happy. Anyways, that's amazing.
There you go. I'll send you a VHS of what's gonna happen. If I have a takeaway, it's similar. It's like you get, people talk about lucky this, lucky that, but you kind of you put yourself in the position to become fortunate when you work hard and you know what you're doing, and you're not afraid to jump in to to an opportunity. It's like yes, there's good fortune. There's also being ready for it when it happens. And I've heard more time and again, people who just, I didn't know if I could do it or not, but I thought I could. And I said yes. And boom, like, it's just, you tend to regret things you don't do. So you might as well regret something that you do because you might actually find it's a real opportunity for something. So yeah, inspiring stuff.
All right, so let's wrap things up. We're gonna have you back 6 more times, so there's gonna be plenty to talk about.
Okay.
So for Manhattan Edit Workshop, I'm Rafi Salem. Thank you so much, Myron Kerstein. You're a legend, and we really appreciate having you on the show today. We can't wait to have you back and learn more about your past. We didn't get to your past and how you got started in the art of filmmaking and the journey.
That'll be the last one we do. Will be the beginning of your career.
Okay. Yeah.
Little memento. And Jason Banky and Josh Apter, you want to give 30 seconds about Manhattan Edit Workshop, what we have coming up?
Jason, what do we got coming up? What are we doing?
I'm not exactly sure when we're going to release this, but hopefully sooner or later, so people can see Wicked. But we do have another event we're going to release with the post-production team of Saturday Night. So that should be something fun to watch. So look for that coming out.
I actually really enjoy. It's nice watching a real-time movie every once in a while. You don't see too many of those. That's like, this is 90 minutes and it's going to be a period of 90 minutes and you're just going to like get sucked in. So yeah, that was a good one. It's nice to get all these screeners this early. Keep the Eddies early every year because I love having access to all these movies. Thanks, Ace.
All right. So we're going to say thank you. And then I'm going to stop the recording and then we're going to take a picture. So
okay.
Thank you, Myron.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Myron.
Appreciate you.
Thank you guys. Real honor. Thanks. Appreciate it.